Hello, and welcome to Show Me History. I'm your host, Amy Blankenship. Buried beneath the streets of downtown St. Louis lay fragments of an outdated mail system. Having a short-lived run, the pneumatic mail system was the cutting-edge technology in its day. The idea of the pneumatic mail system began in Europe. As early as 1853, the London Stock Exchange was using a pneumatic mail system to transmit information about stock prices and sales to its investors and subscribers. They would dispatch information to a telegraph office. In turn, the telegraph office would send the information to clients as needed. By 1866, the City of London was using a similar system to deliver mail or post, whatever you want to call it. Other European nations utilized this service as well, including France, Italy, Germany, Ireland, and Austria. Being inspired by the technology used aboard, our Postmaster General, John Wanamaker, began to implement the first pneumatic mail system in America. The initial bid called for a private company to build the pneumatic system. The Postmaster General knew that no one within our post office had the knowledge or experience with this type of system, so the bidder must build and install the tube system, power receiving stations without any cost to the government. The company could then charge the U.S. Post Office for the use of the system and lease the system to the U.S. Post Office. The Pneumatic Transit Company of New Jersey was the first winning bid. In 1893, the first pneumatic mail system in America was installed in Philadelphia. The line ran from the General Post Office to the East Chester Post Office. Philadelphia soon began developing other lines connecting railway stations to major post offices. At this point, you may be thinking, what is this woman talking about? What is a pneumatic mail system? So I shall explain. A pneumatic mail system consists of underground vacuum-sealed tubing running to and from receiving and sending stations. The tubes are constructed of cast iron and measure about 8 inches in diameter. They were buried anywhere from 4 to 8 feet below ground depending on the city and its topography. The tubes had leaded joints to create an airtight seal. When not open for sending or receiving a canister, they were fastened shut with a bolted flange. The canisters traveling in the tube system were 7 inches in diameter and about 22 inches long. They weighed about 20 pounds prior to being filled with mail. The canisters had doors on each end that lock via a cam bolt. Each canister had 4 wheels to help it aid through the system. They could hold around 500 letters or postcards. The overall process worked by a system of fans and pumps to propel canisters through the tubes. Power stations had rotary blowers and air compressors driven by electric fans. This created an air pressure between 3 to 8 pounds per square inch in the system. The maximum speed of travel was about 30 miles per hour due to all the bends in the tubing system. When operating at full capacity, a system could carry 200,000 letters per hour. The post office had an interesting deal with the pneumatic tube companies building the various systems. All construction and maintenance were to be done by the company, but the actual operation of the systems were to be done by post office employees called rocketeers. Each office or power station had a telephone connecting it to the other offices along the line for intercommunication of issues or problems with the system. A vital element of the maintenance was periodically sending an oil canister through all of the tubing lines. This seems like a disaster waiting to happen to me, but nonetheless, every so often they would send a perforated canister filled with oil through the tube lines to keep them operated. So if you're trying to get a mental picture of this system, think of the tube and canisters at the bank. If anyone deposits money and makes withdrawals like that anymore, I don't know. But I was going through reading about this, it actually really reminded me of the Paddington movie, where Paddington and Mr. Brown journey into the Geographers Guild building. There are miles of pneumatic tube systems all over the building sending information requests. By the way, if you haven't seen the new Paddington Bear movies, you need to. They're really good. Okay, back to the pneumatic mail systems. So St. Louis was the last and fifth city in America to install the pneumatic mail system. After the system in Philadelphia was successful with its debut, Boston, New York, and Chicago all followed suit within the next 10 years. In 1900, the St. Louis Manufacturers Association created a pneumatic mail committee. All of the major cities in the country used pneumatic mail system to deliver and sort mail, and so should St. Louis. I kind of saw this as a keeping up with the Joneses situation. After all, this was considered cutting-edge technology, and the goal for St. Louis was to have the system fully operational and functioning by the opening of the World's Fair in 1904. So on April 21st, 1902, Congress approved a post office appropriation bill. This allocated funds to create 3.16 miles of double tube to be constructed in St. Louis. So St. Louis had 2 lines of pneumatic mail tubing systems installed in a rather congested area of downtown. At the time, the traffic of people, wagons, and railroads delayed delivery of the mail, and the pneumatic tube system was ideal to try to improve the speed of mail delivery. The design and construction was done by the St. Louis Pneumatic Tube Company. The first line of the mail system ran between the post office annex at 18th and Clark behind Union Station to the General Post Office. That's today's old post office at 9th and Olive. This line was to take mail arriving by train to the Central Post Office for further processing and sorting. The second line was set to be constructed between the General Post Office to a relay depot in East St. Louis. The execution of the second line depended on the completion of maintenance and repairs on the Eads Bridge, but by the time the tube construction ended, the railroads were rerouted into and around St. Louis, making the full extent of the second line kinda unnecessary. So instead, the second line ended at a bridge station by the west end base of the Eads Bridge on the Missouri side of the Mississippi River. The main line from Union Station to the General Post Office operated 7 days a week. Monday through Saturday, it processed mail from 4 a.m. to midnight. On Sundays, it was open from 7 a.m. to 11 and then 4:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. The secondary line running from the General Post Office to the Eads Bridge was also open 7 days a week. It operated from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and then on Sundays it only ran from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. So the system we had in the city functioned fairly well, except during the peak hours of 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. And this was after the main mail delivery was made at Union Station. So this time the system would become overloaded and sometimes cause delays of up to 2 or 3 hours for mail delivery. A 1916 report from Congress recommended that all contracts for the pneumatic mail systems not be renewed except for those in Boston and New York. Hearing that Congress wanted to cut funding for the system, the St. Louis Business Committee banded together and sent a delegate to Washington, D.C. to plead their case. It was really no use. By 1917, services in St. Louis were permanently closed. Mail being transported from Union Station and the main post office was now done so by much more efficient means, trucks and vans. In 1917, all federal funding for pneumatic mail systems were cut by Congress. At this time, the post office was still a department of the U.S. government, so the annual budget for the post office had to be approved by Congress. The cost to run the pneumatic mail system and the rental of the systems from parent companies was becoming a burden. It was said to be, quote, an exorbitant, unjustified, and extravagant waste of public funds, unquote. A report conducted by Congress stated that the pneumatic mail system cost $17,000 per mile per year to operate. That's roughly $390,000 per mile of tubing in today's money. Considering New York alone had 27 miles of tubes, the government was pretty much bleeding money on this project. Not to mention, we were in the midst of a world war. So besides the cost, the overall system had some major disadvantages. It could only handle postcards or letters, so all other classes of mail, like packages, still had to be delivered by hand or truck or wagon from one post office to another to eventually the customer. The system was notorious for losing or damaging mail. If there was an issue with any one set of tubes in the system, the entire line would be down until repairs were made. Despite this, other cities found the system useful and sought private funding for the pneumatic mail systems that continued to operate well into the 1950s. The St. Louis branch of the pneumatic mail system was never really ideal for our city, in my opinion. The main line that ran from Union Station to the General Post Office only operated at 26 capacity. And our second line, the bridge line running from General Post Office to Eats Bridge, ran on average about 4% of capacity. Neither of the lines were truly successful in alleviating the delay of the mail, and St. Louis was the smallest and least congested city to have installed the tube system. Although this method of mail delivery was brilliant at the time, the volume of mail grew too quickly and outpaced the system. The automobile proved to be a much more efficient means of mail delivery. Right. Thank you for joining me today. You can find me at our website at showmehistorystl.com, Twitter at showme_history, and then our Facebook page is showmehistorystl. Right, until next time, I'll see you in the loo.